My mom is 31 or 32.
Very old. A little old.
My mom is 39 years old.
Not old.
My favorite thing to do with my mom is definitely go on road trips with her.
Play soccer outside.
Okay.
My favorite thing to do with my mom is everything.
Just spending time with her and talking to her and
That he could buy us a dog?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Because of everything she's given me and everything she does for me.
because I know there isn't anything that she wouldn't do for me.
She helps me out with schoolwork.
She makes me and my sister not fight and make us get along a lot.
My mom likes to listen to music. Play Nintendo Switch all day. Preaching the Bible.
Singing.
The best thing my mom makes is dino nuggets.
My mom is really good at cooking, which is good because I love to eat.
Swedish meatballs.
The best thing my mom makes is gravy and casserole.
I love you, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day!
I love you, Mom.
I love you to the moon and back a million times.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day and I love you.
Happy Mother's Day, Mama.
We love you, Mom.
How can I say it is well when my voice can barely speak? How can I sing you a song in the midst of suffering? Jesus, will you meet me here? Let your peace wash over me. I need you now more than ever. Teach my soul to say, my God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. You would not let me alone, though the world has let me down. All of my sorrow and pain, I will trade it for a crown. Thank you for staying with me when the night was closing in. Whatever my loss, you are still God. I will sing again. My God is still in control, and steadily reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. control, and steadily rains on his throne. Though mountains may tremble and sea billows roll, I'll sing these well, my soul. My God is still in control. My God is still in control.
Good morning, table friends. We are glad you have chosen to join us here online for church today. My name is Janelle, and I am not one of the pastors at the table. However, I am in love with one of the pastors at the table. Our mission at the table is to guide you into a forward-moving relationship with Jesus. And so we hope that this talk today can really help you in your life. Also, we want to wish a happy Mother's Day to all those mothers out there. You're amazing, and we couldn't live life without you. Thank you for all that you do for us. We are starting a new series this week called Won't You Be My Neighbor? And so we're going to hear how we can connect with our neighbors and live out life with them. But before we start that, I want to have a new segment called Won't You Meet My Neighbors? Ta-da! So I have the most amazing neighbors. Their names are Wayne and Lynn. And Wayne and Lynn live right next door to us, so they see all the crazy antics of our boys. And I think they genuinely love them, which is pretty amazing. Lynn will make homemade blankets for our boys that they sleep with every night. And you know when you're in like that childcare bind where you both are gone and you need someone to quickly come and watch your kids? Lynn and Wayne are our people. Also, she will get Carter off the bus and make him like this dreamy, marshmallowy tapioca pudding with cookies and sit and talk with him. They are the most amazing neighbors. We're so thankful for them. We hope you enjoy this first talk in our series, Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Good morning, Table Tribe. It is so good to see you this morning on this Mother's Day. By the way, I know we've already said it, but I just want to say it again. Happy Mother's Day to those mothers out there. Can I just say thank you for the investment that you make in your kids and other kids and the lives of our future. Thank you for what you do. It takes grace and patience. This is what I told my mom this week. It takes grace and patience to do what you do. And I know when I watch my wife, when I watch Janelle, she does things daily that I would never think of or would never know how to do. And so I just want to say thank you from the table, from me to you. Thanks. We are beginning a new series this morning entitled, Won't You Be My Neighbor? And I'm excited for this series because I just have to get to the bottom line this morning. Can I just be honest with you? I am tired of seeing social media posts from people complaining. I am tired of people just talking about everything that we can't do rather than what we can do during this time. Can we just say that this is the opportunity to capitalize on crisis? And here's what I mean. You probably have more time than ever before to be praying. Not only praying for the people serving on the front lines, not only praying for those who are sick, but this is an opportunity to pray for the future of the table and of those people around you who may step foot into church for the first time, who have never considered church before, but because of this, are now thinking about how God can make a difference in their life. And so you have an opportunity to be praying for people, to be praying for the future. And what God is going to do, I don't know, but I'm really excited for it. The other thing is that this is an opportunity for us to be present to our neighbors. See, we understand the power of connection. We know that it's important to be connected to people. This is why we Zoom like forever. Like we spend nearly half the week on Zoom with in our work or with friends or with people that we haven't talked to in a long time. Some of you talk to your college roommates for the first time in a long time, and that's great. But what if, I'm just asking the question, what if we know the power of connection? What if we just were to unplug from the digital world for just a few minutes and begin to look around our neighborhood? What if your neighborhood is where you can make a difference? See, we often associate making a difference with money and success and platforms that will bring us the most notoriety. And I'm just wondering, perhaps your platform for the greatest impact is your neighborhood. It wasn't long ago that I was a youth pastor and I was working with students, and I can remember one of the most vivid discussions we had was geared around the very story that we're talking about today. In fact, Jesus has asked this question in this story, and that's this: who is my neighbor? And I can remember sitting there talking with my students one morning, asking them the same question: who is our neighbor? And of course, they're answering their parents and their friends and people close to them. But the whole point that we were trying to make was everyone is your neighbor. Of course, that answer is a lot like when you ask your kids a question and the answer is Jesus. Of course, like, what else are they supposed to answer? Like, oh, of course, what else are we supposed to say? Like, we're only going to love a few people or a certain group of people? No, we're supposed to love everyone. But looking back, as I think about it, it may be the right answer, but I don't know that it's the bright answer. And here's why I say that is because when we begin to think about loving everyone, or that we consider everyone our neighbor, it's a lot like giving your kid 20 tasks to do in 5 minutes. I mean, you know what happens. They're overwhelmed. They don't even start. It's a lot like your boss coming in at the end of the day and you've had a long day and they said, hey, listen, tomorrow morning I need a project done. And I know you haven't started, but tomorrow it's due. And all of a sudden you're like, I don't even know where I'm gonna get the time to complete this. It's like your teacher who decided to give you a lengthy paper in the middle of finals week. Who does that? Or it's like your spouse. You ever had this? Your spouse decides to invite 20 people over, and by the way, they're coming in the next hour. Your house isn't clean. You haven't cooked anything. They didn't even ask you to begin with if it was okay, but hey, they're coming over. We've never had that happen in our house, and I'm sure you haven't either. But I say all that to say that it is overwhelming. Like, when we think about loving everyone, I think we're in love with the thought of loving everyone, but we actually never start with anyone because it's too hard to start with anyone when you're looking at everyone. So if I could go back and I could talk to my students all over again, I think what I would say is this: start with your actual neighbor. Yeah, crazy thought, isn't it? What would happen if we actually started in our own neighborhoods? Before we dive into the story this morning, one of the things we love to do at the table is we love to talk during the talk. And so this morning you can either talk to a family member about this, you can take notes, in your journal, or or you can go ahead and you can text somebody this question and talk with them over text. But here's the question that I want to start with, and I think it's helpful to where we're going, and it's this: how many neighbors do you actually know in your neighborhood? How many neighbors do you know in your neighborhood? Start there, and then we're going to dive right into the story. This morning, I want to take a look at a conversation that Jesus has with a legal expert found in the book of Luke. Now, there are 4 Gospels. For those of you who've never been to church before, there are 4 Gospels. In other words, 4 accounts of Jesus' life. And what I love about Luke is a guy who was not necessarily a Christian, but decided to go out and to find out whether what happened surrounding the life of Jesus was true. And I think as he began to record these conversations and as he interviewed people, this one kept coming up because it was so important. And so here's the conversation that takes place between Jesus and a legal expert. And here's how it goes. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with your heart and with your soul and with all of your strength and with all of your mind. And oh, by the way, love your neighbor as yourself." Jesus answers, "You have answered correctly. Congratulations." And then he says this. He says, "Do this and you will live." As I listened to the conversation this morning between Jesus and the legal expert, I just have to make a point. It's not the main point. It's just a point. And here's the point that I think we need to understand first, is that we can't love our neighbors on our own power. That's right. We can't love our neighbors on our own power. And to understand where we get that power from, we actually have to go backward in the conversation. So think about this, right? We are supposed to love our neighbors, but we also, in order to love our neighbors, are supposed to love ourselves. And I know I can hear the argument. I can hear people saying, listen, we are so self-centered. We're a self-centered culture. All we ever do is focus on us. I'm all I ever think about. I hear that. I understand that. You actually might make a great point. But I also know that in a decade of being a pastor, I've encountered a lot of people who actually don't like who they are. See, loving who you are at times is really hard. And I've met so many people who have little self-worth, they have no self-respect, they have no self-love, and all they do and all they can think about is what they're not rather than who they are. And see, there's a reason why we don't like our neighbors. It's because we don't know how to love ourselves. And listen, loving yourself is not thinking about how great you are. Loving yourself is knowing how great God made you. That is so key. Loving yourself is not about how great you are. Loving yourself is knowing how great God made you. See, we need to fall in love with the God who has created us and made us and calls us good and has made us for good. The moment we can start with understanding that God has created us to be great is the moment that we learn to love ourselves. And in turn, we learn how to love our neighbors. So I love how the conversation continues because it gets a little edgy. You would think that after giving the right answer, you would just shut your mouth and move on. But of course, this legal expert wants to continue. He needs to prove himself right. And so here's what Luke tells us. After giving the right answer and Jesus just saying, hey, do this and you will live, this is what the legal expert says to Jesus. He says, but he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? right? Isn't that the question we were wrestling with earlier? Who is my neighbor? Here's the hard truth we need to hear this morning. And I hate to tell you, and I hate to tell myself, but it's this: we justify. Why? Just like this legal expert, we justify. We can virtually justify anything. We can justify why we need a new phone. We can justify why we bought the car that we bought. We can justify the bigger house that we didn't necessarily need. We can justify mistakes that we've made. We can justify people that we've hurt. We can justify virtually anything that we want to in order to be right. We can even justify why we don't have relationships with our neighbors. And here is the truth. And I've heard people say this, and this is their justification. This is their justify why. I don't like my neighbor. And that's it. We just don't like our neighbor. And that is our justification for why we don't have relationships with them. But here's the thing. Why don't you like them? You probably don't even know anything about them. And what we do is we allow our dislikes to come from assumptions that we have made from a distance. That's right, I've done this, you've done this, we've all done this. Like, our dislikes with our neighbors have to do with assumptions we've made from our windows, from all the way down the street, right? Why is I dislike them because their dog barks too loud, or it's always getting loose, or why do they have to have so many cars parked out in front of their house? They're probably doing drugs. Or it could be because they have a bunch of teenagers. I mean, hello. You know, why don't they ever cut their grass? Why is their house not kept up? I mean, don't they know that you're supposed to do maintenance on these things? Why does he always have to talk so much? Every time I go out, I've got things to do, places to go, and they always want to talk. Or why is it that when I wave, I love this one. Why is it that when I wave, they just pull in their driveway and put their garage down? Like, see, a lot of the things that we assume about people, these things are made from a distance. The things we dislike about people are made from a distance. And it is why we justify the relationships that we have with our people. I gotta be honest this morning, as I look at this conversation, if it wasn't important to Jesus, my guess is he probably wouldn't have had it. I mean, here he is with a legal expert trying to justify himself, trying to prove Jesus wrong, and yet Jesus continues to engage with him. And so this whole idea of loving God, loving ourselves, and ultimately loving our neighbors is extremely important to him. In fact, here's what I want you to know today as we get ready to end our time together, and it's this, is that neighboring relationships really do matter. That's right, neighboring relationships really do matter. I think as followers of Jesus, it is important that we start considering our neighborhoods as an opportunity to make a difference. See, think about this. What if each of us went out and we began to love our neighbors well? What kind of difference could we make? Have you ever considered that your neighborhood is the platform that God gave you to make the greatest difference? How exciting is that? I mean, I get stoked about this idea of being able to go out and to make a difference, and I don't even have to fly across the world to do it. I can do it right here in my own neighborhood and in my own home. And so this morning, my challenge is this. Can I just say this is the most important part of the message? If you haven't heard anything today, hear this because it's so important. Here's what I want you to do. This week, we're going to begin, and you can do this over the course of 6 weeks, but I want you to know your neighbors, right? Can we just do that? It starts by knowing your neighbor. And so here's what you do. I'm asking you to make a chart, and we're going to put a picture up in just a minute, but I want you to make a chart of the 8 homes nearest to yours. And then underneath, you have all these boxes of 8 different homes. I want you to put the letters A, B, and C in there. And the first thing that I just want you to do this week is I just want you to see how many names you know of your neighbors. Can you name your neighbors? This is a really good question. I mean, it's an important one. Do you know their names? I mean, this gives people dignity. When somebody's talking to you and they don't use your name, it means they don't know you. And maybe they really don't care to know you. Maybe the same is true for our neighbors. Let's just know their names. So this week, fill in how many names you can in those 8 homes that are surrounding you. Let's fill in their names. The second section you can continue to work on. I know this is going to be difficult. It's hard. But start thinking about conversations and interactions that you've had with them. What are some things that you can fill in? Where they grew up. Like, hey, this guy was from Ohio. He was a carpenter. He was a doctor. I mean, all these things that we can learn about them just from having conversations or in passing or while we're standing outside. These are small things. Write those down. And then once we get to C, this is kind of the important part because this means that you've had some really deep discussions with people. This means you've maybe had dinner with them. It means that maybe you've spent out a whole day in the front lawn, or you've had campfires with them and roasted s'mores together. I don't know. But my guess is after a lot of conversation with people, you can begin to fill in, what are these people's dreams? What are their hopes? Do they believe in God? What's their feeling about church? Like, these things, the important things, are the things that will eventually fill in. But my challenge to you as we do this throughout the 6 weeks is just start by knowing their names. Just start there. I know I can already hear some of you saying, Brad, this is really stupid. This is really dumb. Why should I do this? I don't want to know my neighbors. Funny, did you catch what Jesus said in the middle of this conversation? I think we tend to miss it. We tend to focus on loving our neighbors and justifying ourselves, that we miss what Jesus says right in the middle. And he says this, he says, do this. Do this. Love your neighbors, and you will live. Know your neighbors' names. Know their life. Get to know their wants and their desires, their passions and their dreams. And you will live. The word that is used here means to experience God's gift of life. Wow. Notice the expert is trying to figure out how he can go to heaven. And Jesus in this moment is saying, no, I want to give you something more. You know the answer, but if you could do it, you could experience life in its fullness. You could experience what it means to be fully human. You will discover the very thing that you were created for. You will know what it means to make a difference. You will experience God's gift of life in this moment right now. And so as we begin to end our time together, I would just challenge you, don't be flippant about this. Don't just say, whatever, this is a dumb little exercise. I don't need to know my neighbors. I don't like them anyway. This is an opportunity in the middle of a time where you're around your neighbors more than ever before to get to know them, to learn how to love them, and to learn how to be part of their lives and to make a difference. Remember, perhaps God has given your neighborhood to you as a platform to make a great difference in the world. So use it and do it. And I bet you'll learn how to live. If you would you say this prayer with me this morning? Remember, the table is for you, but it's also for the people who aren't here. So we pray this prayer. Lord, bring someone across my path who needs to know you. Give me the eyes to see them, the ears to listen to them, the arms to embrace them, and the heart to love them well. Amen.